Hi, everybody. Welcome to Kindred Skulls. I'm Matt Freese, and we've got a very special pre-draft episode. Last year, I believe it was, we had Luke Braun back on the show, and we had a lot of fun doing it, so we figured we'd bring him back on. Luke Braun, obviously the host of the Locked On Vikings podcast. If you don't listen to that podcast, go listen to that every single day. And he also has Patreon at Luke Braun NFL, or patreon.com/Luke Braun NFL. So I didn't even talk about doing the intro with you before there, Luke, but I got everything right?
Yep.
No. All right. Perfect. And obviously brought Luke on. He's done a work on every single one of the QBs that's like relevant for the Minnesota Vikings, right?
Which is a stretch. I've done 7 QBs.
Yeah. I mean, look, if we're not taking a quarterback in the first round, let's start off with this question, right? If the Vikings don't take a quarterback in the first round, or they don't take, let's call it through Penix and Nix, because some people like Michael Penix and Bo Nix a lot, and go into the season with Sam Darnold, is that a serious football team?
No.
Agreed.
Absolutely not. No, that especially because, like, okay, so the next year quarterbacks are not supposed to be that great, and who knows, right? I mean, there's always somebody that comes up randomly at the end of the year, but or like has this crazy senior year or something that gets to be part of it. But like, if you just like punt on this year, like on purpose, like there's the world where you get turned away. But if you just like punt on this year and go, we'll get a QB later, we'll just do Sam Darnold on a 1-year contract. That's I'm starting to investigate you for tanking. Like I'm genuinely thinking you might get doc draft picks for that.
So yeah, if the Vikings go with Sam Darnold in particular, like I could see him, be a bridge starter, right? We start him for a couple weeks until the rookie's ready to go, and then we end up, going to the rookie. But him being the starter for the whole season, like you said, it's just not a serious football team. So I can't imagine that.
No,
which is why
it's not serious short term or long term.
Yeah. Which is why we're just going to talk about the quarterbacks, because I don't think really there's much of a path for the Vikings to take anybody except at the very least a quarterback at 11, right? Like there has been some conversation, but I mean, the main thing for the Vikings is they're going to trade up. It's everything about the Vikings this offseason has indicated that they're trying to trade up, which most likely means they're going to spend 11 and 23 to get there, right? So unfortunately, mock drafts kind of suck this year, right? Like I tried to do a couple mock drafts.
I haven't even done them.
Yeah. But it's like, all right, I guess I'm at the mercy of the PFF simulator for whatever quarterback falls to 3, right? And then I try to trade with the Patriots, or I try to trade with the Cardinals and with the mercy with whatever quarterback falls to 4. And then I don't have any picks till the 4th round, and I don't know any of those guys' names. So
yeah,
it's kind of brutal. But I've teased it for long enough, right? Let's jump into the quarterbacks. And, actually, here's another quick question for you. For quarterbacks, what's your read on it? Like, obviously, Caleb Williams is going number 1 overall, right? That's set in stone to me. Jayden Daniels, to me, seems pretty in stone as number 2. I don't know if you have the same read on that as I do, though.
I wouldn't say set in stone, but that does appear to be the favorite. Now, it's really funny. The betting odds just today, we're recording this on Friday the 19th, and the betting odds just shifted really hard. And I think that's just because the Vikings had a meeting with Jayden Daniels. And everyone was going,
that's because of the agent drama, I think. Where like Jayden Daniels.
Oh, is it because I haven't followed that at all?
Like,
is his agents like he doesn't want to play for the Commanders or something?
No, because they did the group meeting or whatever. His agent put out a thinking face emoji to like a Mike Florio thing, and it's the Will Levis thing from last year. Is what it is.
Well, or C.J. Stroud. Remember, C.J. Stroud didn't want to play for the Texans, and the Texans were like, "Well, you're gonna."
Yeah. No.
Good luck.
I don't know. I don't really buy into anything that happens this week in terms of the quarterback movement on the market. Like these teams have pretty much already decided on their guys.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I'm no reporter, but with everything that's been reported, Jayden Daniels seems to be the odds-on favorite for the Commanders. But I don't think that that's locked. There is a world where it was all this like very elaborate smokescreen. But here's the thing. Of all the teams that are competent enough in the PR department to pull that off, Washington's might be 32 for me.
Yeah. They are definitely interesting with the new ownership, right? So it's not like they got Dan Snyder in there, but yeah, they're just everything that's coming out of there feels really weird right now. So I'm a little bit confused.
Yeah.
But with that being said, let's go into Caleb Williams. It makes sense to talk about him in the
Sure.
context of these other guys, right? And why don't you go ahead and give your breakdown on Caleb Williams, what you like about his game, what questions you have about his game.
Yeah, maybe we got some Bears fans. So my Caleb Williams deal is like, look, I'm not going to be super crazy. There are some people that have him like 4th or 5th on the board, apparently on like Arif Hassan's consensus board. That's insane. If you are living under a rock, you don't know anything about him. He gets Mahomes comps all the time because he runs around and he throws across his body and he makes all these crazy throws and he has this insane improvisational ability that means no play is ever dead, and that's going to be the value of him. Not to mention mechanics are good, throwing motion is good, he can throw accurately, all that stuff is great, right? That makes you immediately just off the bat, even without the talent of athleticism, that makes you, top 5 guy. You're a franchise quarterback. You're going to be your top guy. But I think what makes people see him as like special, as like generational, is there is this, I'll call it a flexibility, like a physical flexibility to his body that allows him to make these cross-body throws at angles that you usually don't respect as possible, and defenses will not defend. Because it's like, well, if he's going to have to throw that thing across his body, you're kind of, as a DC, as a defensive coordinator, or if you're like a pass game coordinator, you're going, yeah, let him try that all day. We'll probably pick a bunch of them off, but not Caleb. He'll be able to do that. So that's why he's going 1 overall. That's the stuff. And I think if there is to be debate about Caleb Williams, and the reason that I don't have him number 1 necessarily is it's all a loose tier. Like, don't freak out. I've got like these top 3 guys. You can put them in whatever order you want. I'm not going to have a problem with you. But the reason it's not like clear cut to me is he has this, like, because he makes the Superman play all the time, he's got, like, people call it like the Superman complex. And that's the thing to talk about with. That's the like where the debate lies, is how concerned are we about this Superman complex? And look, when easy mode is there and you go make a play on hard mode, that over the long run is going to get you in trouble more often than it gets you more. Right? That is not a way to live. That will work out and make some really cool highlights and make some really disgusting lowlights. The bad games that he had, like you think like Arizona State, Notre Dame, those are the 2 games that kind of go down as his bad games, where he either threw a bunch of interceptions or dropped interceptions and was like, whoa, this dude kind of is like stinking right now, were because he went into hero mode and played a very volatile game, even though it's a volatile game that he's good at, and then made mistakes in that, and they were catastrophic, and they led to losses for USC. So hero mode is awesome, and he's fantastic at it, right? Special at it. But if you're his QB coach, the best way, I think, to make Caleb Williams grow is to rein that in. And that's, I'm talking about, like, how do you get the most out of him? How do you grow him into this, like, true blue franchise QB, top 5 QB guy that makes the Pro Bowl every year and wins you a bunch of Super Bowls? Is you rein that hero mode in. You still have it. You don't want him to never do it, right? But if easy mode is there, you want him to stay on easy mode. And by easy mode, I mean, staying in the pocket, doing your progressions, doing your whole thing. When he does that, it's awesome. It's great. He can get through his progressions. He can deliver the ball on time, accurately, all that stuff. Do that more. And the concern for me is, why does he have this? He's always got, like, the play, capital T, capital P, the play in his mind at all times, whether he needs to go into that mode or not. He's always trying to do this Sports Center top 10 thing. And if you can get him to just, like, relax and just, like, chill that out a little bit and just say, no, just, like, take your, nobody goes broke, making a profit, that kind of thing. Take what the defense gives you a little bit more. Are you like that? That's a mentality thing. That's not a quarterback trait. That's a personality trait. So if you're going to try to edit that about him, and if you're going to try to encourage something different about him, you are sort of opening up and making tweaks in the part of his game that is the whole reason you're drafting him for. And now you're going to start messing with it. So what happens there? Or if you don't mess with it at all, and you put him behind a crappy offensive line, like, say, a team with a right tackle with, like, major red flags about effort, and he has
I
to go
can't
into hero mode all the
imagine any
time.
particular team that would be talked about there, but
Yeah, it's not like this just happened anywhere that will maybe have Caleb Williams. Like, this is the concern for me if I'm a Bears fan, right? And I don't think it's enough of a concern to make them not do it. Like, I get it, he's their guy, but like, if there is a world where he doesn't work out, it's the world where he got so enamored with the hero ball and he had to exist that way forever because Darnell Wright isn't playing well and because they draft another rookie tackle and put too much on his plate right away and he gets beat a bunch. And then suddenly you don't have those bookend tackles and you just start playing Caleb Williams runaround ball. And you just replace Justin Fields runaround ball with Caleb Williams runaround ball. And then, teams in the NFL, they know how to do it. But because he's so flexible and because he can make those off-platform throws so well on the scramble drill, he just opens up so much more of the field that he just has access to. There's this one UCLA throw that I'm sure you've all seen on social media if you're on it, where he just heaves this thing across his body all the way to the other sideline while on the run. It's like that Jameis Winston touchdown on against the Vikings, but like on purpose.
Right. But like on purpose, and also there wasn't a corner. It wasn't like an absurd play by the receiver. It was just to a guy that was open.
It was just to a guy, and it was like 30 yards downfield. Most insane thing you'll ever see. So you do all that, and that's all super exciting. And when you get into hero ball mode, he will be more difficult to defend than your average hero, than your average guy just running around on a scramble drill. But can you get a rhythmic offense going with him? That is just like, can you just methodically go down the field, or is it going to have to be that? Is it going to have to be hero ball? Then you're going to get inconsistency. You're going to get some of the sickest games you've ever seen. And then you're going to get some games where you go like, oh my God, this dude is just like fighting for his life every single play. What's up? When maybe he's making some of his own problems.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think my major question, right, which was answered pretty well in that, is how does Caleb Williams fail? Right? It sounds like the answer is he gets stuck in that hero mode and he can't get out of it. So I guess go ahead.
You try to chill him out and you try to be like, you need to be a professional quarterback. And then you just like super ruin his personality.
Yeah.
Like that's the challenge. So you're 1 overall with your first overall pick, tying your franchise now to the ability of your QB coach to get that responsibly reined in without making him scared to run, without shattering his confidence. That's not a guarantee. And so that's the world where he fails.
Yeah. So I kind of want to ask about the degree of failure a little bit here, because we're Vikings fans. We're probably ultimately rooting for Caleb Williams to fail in some capacity, right? So
of course,
if he, isn't able to get out of that hero ball mode or goes into turtle mode permanently, right? Is this like a catastrophic, let's say Zach Wilson level failure, right? Where that doesn't seem redeemable at all? Or is it more, and this is a feel thing, right? Because he didn't go for very much, but more on the Justin Fields sense where you saw a lot of talent from Justin Fields, right? And he wasn't putting it together from a consistent offense. So do you think that that's a more likely outcome than like a catastrophic flame out of the NFL?
For sure. Yeah. This is, and you just hear it. We'll hear it over and over and over again. The same narratives will come out of Chicago. It'll just be like super Groundhog Day. Like, well, he just doesn't have a team around him. Yeah. You'll hear that. Like, oh, well, did you see here's the pressure stats, right? Or he doesn't, the receivers aren't good enough because Keenan Allen got old and DJ Moore is like the 26th best wide receiver or whatever. The coaching staff
that drafted him got fired after his first season, and then they brought in an entirely new coaching staff and it didn't work. I can't.
Which, by the way, super that's going to happen, right?
Would like do that 3 times in a row. If they do it to Eberflus, who I think is a fine defensive coordinator, right? But he's not going to bring you the offensive side of the ball that you want out of trying to develop a quarterback, right? Like, yeah, if they do it again for the 3rd time in a row, right, to Trubisky, where they fired John Fox and brought in Nagy, and then they fired Nagy.
You got to align this, man. Sync up.
It's like, come on.
Yeah. But like there's so many worlds where that doesn't happen, where they do get it, or where they just embrace the runaround stuff, where the tackles, where Darnell Wright takes a step forward, they get another good tackle, things work out, and then Caleb Williams is the guy we all think he is. But I think that it's really hard for me to put him in that Trevor Lawrence, Andrew Luck generational category. Sure, he's your number 1 guy. I'll give that to you. That's fine. But I don't, it's really hard to hear people talk about him as riskless.
Yeah, no. And like, look, if there's anything we've learned in the draft, it's that no prospect is a perfect, like, can't miss prospect, right? There are so many guys that we think are guaranteed hits or as close to guaranteed hits as possible, and they just end up failing in the NFL. There's so many circumstances that we're not privy to from the outside, or even teams aren't privy to, right, with these individual players that we can't know for certain. But just going over everything, you do like Caleb Williams' potential to be a quality starting quarterback for the Bears. I think that came through to me as well.
Yeah, I don't think there's anybody like I don't think anybody is out there. Even the hottest takester. I don't know. I guess there's probably somebody that's like some like UCLA fan who's like a huge hater who's like, this dude sucks.
Yeah, no, for sure. All right, let's flip it over to Jayden Daniels, who I know is your number one quarterback. And like you said, it's loose, right? It's like these guys
Loose,
are in the
for
same
sure.
tier, and it's maybe more of a personal preference thing than a true like, oh, this guy's number one with a bullet. So go ahead on Jayden.
Yeah. So the reason I love Jayden is explosiveness. If you speak like this is going to be kind of an analytics argument. But you can see how, but like compare that to the way that he plays. So like if you talk to any like analytics person about like what drives offensive success, they will say explosives. Explosive plays are where it's at. The bread and butter, the quibbling over, half a yard of EPA per thing, the median plays, those are important. And those are, I think, the ones that are, I'll call them more expensive. They take the more TLC, more coaching, more drilling, all that stuff. They will require more of your preparation. But if you look at the course of a game, the plays that decide that game are the big explosive ones. And all Jayden Daniels does is explosive plays. He is very good and efficient at generating those explosive plays. And that's just incredibly exciting. And then the other thing is, as compared to Caleb Williams and Drake Maye, this is going to be a scorcher of a take.
Sure.
But to me, he seems a little bit more comfortable in the pocket. He is an eyedropper. He'll run around. We'll talk about that.
So
but
that's
he keeps his feet under him. That's okay. The thing. He keeps his feet under him. So this is a footwork take. But when he does get around, get to run around, he can scramble, he can house a run from 70 yards out, right? You see that. And then he is just like a slot fade maven. Just go balls and slot fades, hit those things on the sideline. That's Malik Neighbors. This is like Brian Thomas's whole deal. Those two guys, and just heaving those things up all day long, if throwing them well to maximize them.
Just to cut in here, if you have the dudes, throw the ball to the dudes, right? Like,
for sure.
If you're the LSU offense, you're not trying to make Jayden Daniels the most attractive prospect to NFL teams. You're trying to win football games, right? So you're going to hit your 2 first-round wide receivers and just go run the offense that way, because no corners can stop him, even in the SEC, right? So
yeah, Michael Penix the same way with Rome Odunze, and I'm not a Penix fan at all, but that's not the thing I hold against him. Yes, you have Rome, throw it up like Jesus. Like, what are you doing? What are you trying to show off on hard mode? No, go throw it up to your superstar. So, and he's really good at that ball. So if Jayden Daniels came to the Vikings, I have this vision of like, running around all the time, forcing them into zone coverage because they can't play man because he's too much of a threat with his legs. And then that just creates a million one-on-one go balls for Justin Jefferson. And Justin Jefferson gets 4,000 yards a season. Like that's the vision that I would see with Jayden Daniels. The things that you'll hear about him that don't work out, we can get into these now, are, for one, volume over the middle, I guess. Like people say he doesn't throw over the middle. Now he throws over the middle enough for me. There's enough for me to see that he has the skill set to do it. And he just preferred these like big slot fades to the sideline because duh. But people don't like that about him. And then the eye dropping, right? If there is pressure, he's not really going to stand in and deliver that. Which is, it's funny. Like in the pocket, he has this instinct to protect himself, where he will run around. He will avoid the hit. He does not want to get hit in the pocket. And then once he gets out of the pocket, he's like Wile E. Coyote. And there's these low lights. Like if you have seen one clip of Jayden Daniels online, the most likely clip that it is against Ole Miss of him like fighting for extra yardage and then getting blown up. He looks like a podcaster and the ball comes flying out. It's this hideous thing. So then people talk about injury concerns. He's a skinnier guy, you know, and he gets himself lit up like that. That's sort of a non-issue for me. For one, I think the skinniness of a frame doesn't really correlate to injury as much as we would like intuitively think it does. If you think of somebody like Lamar Jackson, who he gets comped a lot to, I think that's a little sloppy, but whatever. Who misses games because he doesn't ever eat a vegetable,
Yeah.
but that has nothing to do with his build, right? That has more to do with like take care of your body, Mike. Like please, and Orange, I'm begging you, Lamar. There's illness all the time with him.
When he
and
comes
then
down with scurvy, it's going to be the least surprising thing.
He's gonna get syphilis and miss games. Like, but when you think of like QBs that get injured a lot, it's QBs with injury histories, QBs that like have torn up their knee and now they're at they're greater injury risk of that, or bigger QBs that use that size to try to hang in the pocket with guys hanging all over them that then create, you know, special awkward tensions on their legs and stuff. And then, you know, or you're just stopped up and you can't protect yourself from the hit anymore. And then you get lit up and that's how you get your ribs broken. And standing in the pocket and delivering, that's what gets your ribs broken. That's what got Kirk Cousins' ribs bruised, broken in 2022. So those things are all injury risks. The way Jayden Daniels plays isn't so much of an injury risk. It just looks really funny.
So,
which at the end of the day doesn't correlate to production.
The thing to me with Daniels, that him getting blown up indicates a little bit. And obviously I haven't watched, you know, I really haven't watched tape on any of these guys, but for me with quarterbacks and any runners in general, like Lamar doesn't get blown up to the extent that Jayden Daniels does because he has this special, in my opinion, spatial awareness where he knows where bodies are around him at all times and is able to adjust for that in real time. Like, I think that's why he's so effective and adept at getting like 1 or 2 extra yards or getting exactly what he needs to get there. Or like Patrick Mahomes, you know, you talked about Caleb Williams throwing. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes does the same thing where he just can get the ball off at body angles that make no sense. I think he has a little bit of that as a runner where he's not the fastest guy, but when it's a critical game situation, he's always scrambling and ends up getting exactly what he needs to be. I do agree with you that I think it's funny, like how we talk about, oh, we like these big physical frames on quarterbacks, and then like, granted, Allen's been pretty healthy, but like he hasn't really missed games, I should say, but he gets banged up like every single season, right? It seems like we're talking about a Josh Allen lingering injury. Obviously 2 years ago it was that UCL or whatever that he suffered, and it was like Big Ben throughout his career, right, would always have that injury, and he's kind of like the prototypical massive quarterback. So it is kind of funny how the general
Cam Newton, Andrew Luck, like the big guys are the ones that get banged up all the time, and the skinny guys, they will. Like, remember that thing with Kurt Benkert that was like, he knows that Kurt Benkert was like, oh, good job protecting yourself, because he like went out to the sideline instead of taking a big hit on that play, and he had like seen a couple of those and he called it out because he hadn't seen like the Looney Tunes stuff yet, and everybody went crazy on it. But like, there's kind of a point there. And also teaching a dude to slide is nothing. It's fine. He'll learn how to slide. It'll be okay.
Who was it? Somebody met with like Joe Mauer to learn how to slide, didn't they, back in the day? For the Vikings?
It was I want to say it was Kyler Murray.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah.
Or there was a thing with Kyler Murray learning how to slide. Maybe,
really?
Or this is maybe
Kyler
older.
Murray was a baseball player, so I'd be shocked if he was like, he was like a first round pick.
Oh, maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
So anyway, I swear it was like 10
it's getting into the
somebody.
mentality to stop fighting for yards. You're the franchise. That'll happen. It's fine. You can teach a quarterback how to slide in like a day. It's okay.
So the question going back, and this is something you referenced a little bit, right? Jayden doesn't throw over the middle of the field a ton. Do you have turn down issues with what he's doing over the middle of the field? By which I mean, like, there is a route that is open, that is part of the progression, that is going across the middle of the field, and he's just not seeing it or choosing not to throw it and kind of big play hunting to the Caleb side of things, right? Or is it really there's just not a ton in the middle of the field because the LSU offense doesn't run that way?
So I think I caught a couple, but not a lot of them, and maybe I missed them, right? Like, this is a hard thing. So I'll be humble about that. But I think it was more when there is pressure, the eyes don't stay up, so we're not scramble drilling. And I think LSU also, this is kind of the cope for me with it, is LSU's receivers didn't really execute the scramble drill. It didn't seem like what they were coached to do. It didn't seem like the plan. It seemed like when Jayden's out of the pocket, you block because then he might be able to score, instead of trying to, run around and do the normal scramble drill where one guy works deep, one guy works shallow. You generally try to work away from coverage, like these rules that are fairly universal over everything. LSU didn't do it. So once you're out of the pocket, once pressure happened, there was nobody for him to throw to. Everybody had their backs turned to him blocking. And now it's time for him to do that. And that seemed to be what they practiced, which is fairly bold. But if you have Jayden Daniels, a pretty interesting strategy. I kind of like that. So I don't want to overreact to that kind of eye dropping thing too much. And that's like the main thing that everybody like who's like, this dude's not an NFL quarterback is reacting to. It's like, well, yeah, because they did that. Like that was very on purpose. Like this was the plan. This wasn't like a bad habit or an instinct. Now it will be a habit that you have to break if you don't want to also do that. But like, shoot, I kind of good with it in the NFL too. But to throwing over the middle, like that means that he's abandoning his progression. He's not coming back into it. And then you're just going to like miss stuff. I think for him progressing, there was stuff that was slow sometimes. And then you'll miss some of those tighter windows where if it's a go ball, you're just throwing that thing up, right? There's not like precision in the timing of that. Yes. The timing of that is a little looser, but you're trying to throw a backside basic over between two linebackers. The timing of that's pretty crucial. And so things would be a little slow sometimes, but just a tick. And maybe that. So all those things I think add up to a guy that's not really going to take the timing stuff a lot and is instead going to go for the explosive, which is sort of what I like about him.
Okay. Yeah. And to go back to the 1-2, everything's on open field, a little bit of pressure and run. That's like what Josh Allen was doing in his first 2 years in the NFL, right? And it didn't look great, but Josh Allen is obviously a phenomenal quarterback. And we can talk about some warts that he has in his game, right? But like, he's still the second best quarterback in the NFL. It's like, if that's the outcome for the Vikings there, and obviously they're not similar as players from like a physical standpoint, I would say, just because of how big Allen is. But it's one of those things where I think it could be learned as it goes for a quarterback, which kind of brings me to the next question I have. And maybe the final question on Daniels here is, he needs to progress in some things in this game. The Vikings are going to want to have some timing, anticipation throws in their offense. Like I believe Kevin O'Connell is going to want to adjust to whichever quarterback he gets, but like that doesn't mean he's going to throw out the staple concepts that work, right? That have that timing anticipation element. So being that he's an older prospect, right? Being that he has 5 years of college starting experience, right? I think he started every single year at Arizona State. He started at LSU, both years he was there. Do you think it's harder for him to progress in his game than some of the younger players like Drake Maye, who has 2 years of starting experience, like JJ McCarthy, or that? Or do you not really take age as a concern?
I mean, you kind of have to answer that by proxy, right? Sure. And that's what age is it's a proxy for how much improvement do you have ahead of you.
Yeah.
But that dynamic has as much to do with the teacher as it does the learner, right? So I don't know, it depends on who's coaching him in Washington, right? And how that relationship develops, which is pretty difficult to predict. But if we're going to go by proxy, older guys tend to just like not really change their game as much as younger guys do. Makes a lot of sense. That doesn't make it hopeless, but it makes it that much less probable. But you have to speak in probabilistic language and maybes and hedge everything super hard on that. So it's probably not that satisfying of an answer, but I kind of look at that and say, okay, if I had like a catastrophic problem with anything about his game, then I'm going to be way less forgiving of it than I will with somebody who is like, JJ McCarthy's age.
Yep.
That you're just going to kind of be a little bit less expectant that, that'll develop. You can't really throw a lot of things into that bucket because he's already been playing college football for 5 years. Why didn't it develop already? And if you have a good answer to that question, then you might be okay.
Yeah. Do you think he, as is a quality NFL starter? I guess is the question from there.
Yeah, I do. I don't think that there's like, I think I've seen somebody say about every single prospect, that guy needs to sit here. But no, I think he comes in and plays right away because he comes with a solution to his own problems, right? If he is an eyedropper, well, then he's a major threat on the ground. And it's not just, and it's maybe a little bit of a crutch, but it's also like you can play that way a little bit. And I don't know. It's kind of the same thing as both Caleb and Drake Maye, that like you don't want to encourage that habit too much by putting him behind like a dreadful offensive line. So good luck. But yeah, like that also is maybe already metastasized because he's been playing this way for 5 years.
Yeah. So, I mean, if we go back to, the Vikings fit, I think it works really well. We don't have the same offensive line concerns. We do have the interior concerns, but the tackles can play pretty well. And, I think re-signing Dalton Risner, even if that's not the best solution in the world, could give us a solid enough offensive line across the board to make our weapons shine with Jayden Daniels, right? Like, I don't think we run the risk of ruining him by having abysmal pass protection as long as we make sure we get that left guard slot, shored up a little bit there. So
yeah, the bookend tackles are huge,
yeah.
right? Like a rough left guard, you can slide protections at him. You can like mitigate that. They just have to not be like Dakota Dozier, which we're kind of flirting with that right now because we don't have a guy under contract.
Dexter Lawrence get isolated on Garrett Bradbury or something like that.
Right. And well, that's becomes the cat and mouse of up in the trenches, but it's like a fairly solvable problem, more than like if you have the two tackles, it becomes way more solvable because you can leave those guys on an island and just work on the interior.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So Jayden, Luke obviously has him as his number one, thinks very solid option for the Vikings. Let's get to Drake Maye, the consensus third best quarterback. I actually don't know where you have him ranked.
Is he consensus 3 now?
I'm sorry, he's consensus 2. Jayden's consensus.
He's consensus
3.
2. He's just probably going third.
Right. That's what I meant there. Yeah. So give us the lowdown.
I was gonna flip out. Yeah. So Drake Maye is loosely 2 for me because and so honestly,
Caleb's
like
loosely 3 for you then.
Yeah, I guess.
I mean,
but again, put him in whatever
it doesn't
order you want.
really
I'm
matter,
not gonna freak out.
But...
Yeah. But a lot of it is just because of like the rhythm. The North Carolina quick game and stuff, especially as you see his season progress, because he was learning a new offense that whole senior season, and you see that season progress and he gets more comfortable, and then things are very like on time and really nice. There's a lot of Josh Allen comps, and while that's lazy, I don't think it's like super wrong. He's got a very similar size and a build. He's just this massive human that's like running around and like heaving deep balls and stuff. And he has this same like improvisational, what on God's green earth did you just accomplish? Kind of like your brain just melts out of your ears when you see it kind of stuff. And it gives you that same like improvisational ability, but not unlike Caleb Williams, he has this Bailey thing. And what I saw with him, and this was maybe the biggest reason that I was willing to kind of say, yeah, I guess I'd take it. I'd do that over Caleb, is bailing from the pocket over the course of the season turned into just drifting a little too far. And then you ruin your pocket, but it's like you saw improvement over the course of the season. And that makes it really easy to project it to continue to improve. So like, okay, quick, he's on an upward trajectory.
Do you watch games in order when you're watching guys typically, or do you
not always? But I was told I should with him. So because of this, because he was learning a new offense and stuff. So I kind of made a point to, but not always. I mean, at the end of the day, I am aware of the context. Okay, this is the last game of the season. I'm going to see things different than this game versus that game, right? I don't think you have to experience them exactly in order. You just have to be aware of that context as you watch through. But like, Maye has an astounding deep ball. And he would just be really excited. I've been calling him NFC Josh Allen for a long time. And not Josh Allen as a prospect, Josh Allen as a pro, like as like right now, Josh Allen, where you get some of this bozo stuff, like super bozo ball. What in God's green earth were you thinking? Flipping the ball to somewhere stupid, total brain fell out stuff. And you're going to have to chill out on that. You're going to have to hope that those things don't happen, but it's just like kind of worth it because of, again, explosive potential. The thing I don't like about him is footwork related. This is the thing that bugs me a lot. And it was super unfortunate when I saw a clip from his pro day that everybody was like geeking out over. And I saw the same problem. So when you're working the pocket, when you're on your launch point, there's pressure. You don't want to bail entirely, which at the beginning of his season, I think he was a little bit too willing to just like bail. You know, you want to rescue that pocket if you can, right? Playing from in the pocket is always going to be easier than playing from outside it. And when he does try to save the pocket, he doesn't keep his feet wide. You want your feet shoulder width as you're ready to throw. And if you just start running, I mean, like next time you're walking on the sidewalk, run and pay attention to how narrow your feet get as they go in front of you as you're like sprinting, right? Now you have to widen them back out when you stop to throw or you're throwing off platform, both of which are difficult, right? One takes a lot of time and the other one makes you inaccurate. So Drake Maye has like pretty bad accuracy numbers because he's always throwing from off platform, or he's always throwing off the run, or he's always throwing from these weird ass bases. Chill out and get your feet right. And I think that is another one where it's like that one's not, I don't have to change his personality, right? I just have to give him a footwork habit, and that feels a little bit easier. So that is, I guess, my rationale. But again, I mean, we are nitpicking. We're talking, 95s and 96s here, like whatever. So don't come freaking out to me, all right? If these guys don't end up in this order.
Look, if you're listening to this podcast and you're like, oh man, we need to hold Luke to the fire on his rankings 1, 2, 3. I don't really think you're listening to this podcast. Like, we don't try to do hot takes and rank guys. We try to watch the tape and talk about what's going on. So
yeah, but like that's the thing. He leaves his base when he goes, and why he leaves is, I think, a subject of a debate that I could have with people I'm not really interested in like having arguments with, because their opinion is fine. But like QB class, so people have like snitch tagged me or him in like my mentions sometimes, which is very funny. But QB class's whole deal on this, Derek Klassen, who does his whole QB guide, is that Drake Maye, when he's drifting, he's like looking for throwing lanes. He's trying to change throwing angles and look for lanes. I don't necessarily buy that, because is there not a play design for that that's supposed to like have lanes open a certain way? I think he sees flash of color and he responds to it poorly. Or he overreacts to flash of color. If he can get his feet wide, he will be a super awesome pocket maneuverer. Like that, I can see the mentality that it needs to be had. Like you kind of have to psychoanalyze a little bit. So I can see him like seeing flash of color and not necessarily wanting to leave the pocket over it. But then when his feet get narrow, he takes steps that are too big. And suddenly he has cleared too much space and he's ruined the angle for his tackle. Not that UNC offensive line did great, but a lot of stuff wasn't their fault. And some of that was Drake Maye's. He made a fair share of his own problems, and that's the concern, is will that continue to happen? Plus the just like, oops, my brain fell out and I threw up in my lap. Here's an interception.
Yeah, so real quick, back to the mechanics. Like, I know you talked about his quick game a little bit. When he's throwing quick game, does he still have the major footwork issues that you saw? Or like when he is in rhythm with a defined thing? So it's not like a Will Levis problem where Will Levis's feet were just all over the place all the time because he didn't know how to line up to throw, right?
No, yeah. This is about when you're on your launch point, everything's fine.
Yeah.
Once he tries to move off his launch point, that's the issue. And that does not come up on a lot of plays. So it's an idea that I talk about a lot because I find it interesting. Like academically, I think it's an interesting thing to discuss and explain. And I think it makes for good content to explain, but it's something that just won't come up on a whole bunch of the plays.
No, so that is actually more heartening to me, right? Because like when things are on schedule and he's in rhythm, it kind of makes sense. And then you need to tweak the footwork, but it's not there's a baseline where if you want an every play repeatable thing, there's a baseline to work with there, right? Which is what you want with quarterback mechanics. That he can do it in some instances. You just need to port that to other parts of his game rather than totally reworking everything he does as a footwork player.
And that gets you on the field. That's really important when you have that quick game that you can just like, okay, one step, drop and fire. Like, okay, we can get you first down, second down, get you in rhythm, get you feeling things. And we can run that as an offense. This was my deal with Will Levis because he ran so much of his quick game at Kentucky that season after Liam Cohen left. That he was able to like you can run an offense for him that's a whole bunch of West Coast slants and stuff, and then like the occasional bomba. and like, let's take a shot play, right? Let's try to get everybody playing against bubble screens, and then let's take a shot play. Like, okay, there's a vision for an offense. It's not the best, it's not the most dynamic thing, but it'll be a rookie year thing, and you can kind of expand on that at whatever pace Levis is comfortable with. So there's the vision, right? Kind of a narrow vision, and that's why I thought he was a second round guy, which he turned out to be. But you can see the vision there. But Drake Maye, you don't need to narrow it down, right? You can do that same thing where you run that quick game and stuff, but so long as you're not flashing color, he'll stay on his launch point. He'll deliver in rhythm. He'll deliver an accurate pass. That part of his game, phenomenal. Absolutely love that. The throwing mechanics, the motion, all that stuff. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. It's just a matter of like the pressure response, which when that's kind of part of the draw of Drake Maye, and this is, I feel the same about Caleb Williams. The draw of him is, when pressure happens, he can improvise and do all this cool stuff. And when I look at that, I see, okay, pressure is actually affecting him way more than I want it to. We need to make pressure affect him less. And we need to take this part of his game, that's the thing that gets all the clips posted, that gets out on Sports Center, and we need less of it. Okay, now how do I value that prospect?
Yeah. No, it's interesting. So to go back, I mean, at the beginning, we're talking about he gets compared to Justin Herbert, I think, from a frame perspective, because Josh Allen's a little bit bigger of a player, and then Josh Allen from a play style perspective, right, all the time. One of the things with those two guys, and you can chop up arm talent like 8 million different ways, right? Yeah. So like when people say arm talent, it's a really weird question, but both Herbert and Allen have absolute cannons, right? In terms of the velocity of their ability to put, first of all, make throws with a low trajectory, which I think matters quite a bit in terms of just the time it takes for the ball to get there. Those two might be the best guys in the league. And if they're not the two best, Anthony Richardson's in there as third, right? But we didn't see a ton of Anthony Richardson. For me, right? And that's not to say that Patrick Mahomes doesn't have the best arm in the NFL, right? Because he can put the ball on a string, or like Aaron Rodgers.
It's a different move. Yeah, Rodgers. Yeah, Rodgers would do that, but it was floatier. It's like the Russell Wilson moon ball versus like that 60 yards on a rope. What the hell?
Yeah, and it's like Caleb Williams is more in that Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes range of arm, right? Just in terms of the weird physical throwing talent where you can kind of put it absolutely anywhere. I think Maye is on the spectrum, but I haven't really watched him. Do you think he matches up with Herbert and Allen in terms of the pure velocity he's able to put on throws, or you think he's probably not quite there?
I wouldn't say to that level.
Yeah.
It's good. It's certainly above average. Like it's, but I don't think it's quite there to that like cannon level. You know who else has a cannon? Will Levis. Yeah. Will Levis has a absolute 70-yard bomba. Like that's his thing. I don't think that's like there's plenty of zip, perfectly functional. You're not going to have throws that he can't make, which is which for many people, probably for consensus, puts him above Jayden Daniels. But it's that Allen and those guys are like I think on another level.
So I know Daniels doesn't have as good of arm strength as either, Maye or Williams. Do you think there are throws that are limiting for Daniels? Just to go back to that a little bit.
Well, I was just referencing like the middle of the field thing. You don't think he can throw it or whatever, like that's going to put it over. But like for Drake Maye, access to the whole field, absolutely not a concern.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think you already answered this question, but you think you can install an offense with Drake Maye that puts him on the field immediately and say, maybe we'll keep a little bit of training wheels on you with this offense, or, maybe you don't even think he needs training wheels in the offense immediately to play in a Kevin O'Connell offense.
Yeah, that wouldn't be the concern. If you want Drake Maye to sit, I actually super get it, but it's the footwork. It's changing the low and if you really want to get tinfoil hats on, Kevin O'Connell has talked in a couple of settings about like what he values in a QB and stuff, and he references a lot of like, hey, we can fix the lower half easier than we can fix the upper half. You can drill footwork a little bit easier than you can like change throwing mechanics. The upper half is a little bit like a golf swing where there's a lot of feel to it. There's a lot of instinct to it. And once you start thinking about it, all sorts of things can fall apart. The lower half, you can change without forcing you to think about it because you can do agility drills. You can do footwork drills. You can start stepping in and out of ropes and by cones. You can figure something out. And God, it just sounds like he's talking about Drake Maye when he's saying that. It really sounds like he's talking about Drake Maye.
Yeah.
But that really would be the kind of thing where like if you don't, if you put him on the field, he'll know where to go. He'll know what he's supposed to do. But then when pressure comes, if he's going to start ruining his own pockets a whole bunch, that could metastasize bad habits in the pocket. And you don't want to do that. So let's fix his footwork, then get him out there. And if you want him to sit for a while before that, super get that. And that's what Sam Darnold's here for.
Yeah, no. So that's a really good breakdown on Drake Maye. Let's move it over to JJ McCarthy and go through what you think about him.
It's pissing people off. All right.
Yeah.
People are so polarized on him. It's crazy. I definitely fall on the more positive side with him as other people. I don't have him, above Drake Maye or whatever. Some people are crazy about it. And some people have him below like Penix, and I think that's insane too. Like, I think he's pretty comfortably QB4, and I think there's a decent gap between him and the top three, and a massive gap between him and the next three. The game is a lot more controlled. I think of all of the top four quarterbacks, I like the way he works the pocket the best. He is the one most willing to and best at rescuing the pocket when there is pressure coming. And boy, was there pressure. Here's the other thing. Like, people give him all kinds of flack for Michigan having this really good team and all these players getting drafted. They stunk at pass protection. They were dreadful at pass protection. Every time there was a drop back pass, third down.
These games, I watched one Michigan game, and I was shocked at how bad I thought the offensive line was for the one that
was horrible.
Won the Joe Moore Award and 2 years in a row, and it was heralded as this incredible, amazing offensive line. I was like, what is even going on here? It was the Michigan State game. Michigan State is
road grading. Good. This is Big Ten. They're for run. They're run players, and that's what they're all. That's why they're all going day 3, because they're run players and they're not really pass blockers. So there was a pressure issue with JJ McCarthy, but unlike the other guys, it wasn't because he was ruining angles. He was down on his launch point. Guy comes in. Now he's got to solve the problem. His feet stay wide. And I went from watching Drake Maye directly to JJ McCarthy, which maybe made this sear into my brain too much. But I was like, oh my God, that's what it's supposed to look like. Thank you. So I love the way that he deals with pressure. And when he does have to get flushed out of the pocket, he's fantastic at the scramble drill. One of the things on the scramble drill is you don't want to lose or gain any depth. Your launch point is your launch point. And if you're supposed to be at, say, an 8-yard drop back depth, you want to stay at 8 yards. You don't want to go backwards. Backwards is never good. Nobody likes backwards. Josh Dobbs. But if you are going to flush out of the pocket and you do have to get some depth just to get around the tackle, you want to carve that depth back down. But you don't want to carve it down beyond your launch point, because you're probably going to have to start carving down as part of your throw, because you want to be running toward the throw, right? You want to keep your space to do that. Yes. So you want to stay level and go flat toward the sideline, as flat as you can, because sometimes you got to get around a guy. Really consistent at that. And the scramble drill is awesome. There's all kinds of really cool scramble drill highlights. So I got this vibe. And I was sort of insulated from narratives when I got this. And then I looked up what people were actually saying, and I was shocked that people were saying that he got carried by his offense. I was like, this dude's holding it together like Spider-Man and the Train. Mm-hmm. He is barely holding these idiots together. And he was let down by some of his receivers too. Not Roman Wilson. Roman Wilson had some drops, but Roman Wilson is fine. But it was all the other guys. There was this freshman that was starting that, if they were running an out route, well, you're supposed to kind of work back toward the QB on that a little bit, and they just wouldn't. It would be, JT O'Sullivan calls it an interception angle. They would either drift it up or run it flat, and that's way harder for him to throw it. So he will throw where he expects that guy to carve down to, and it'll look like he missed, and it'll get charted for everybody as an inaccuracy, because a lot of people aren't looking for that from the wide receiver. So I saw a lot of those mistakes, and I was like, man, if this dude, if this team was halfway decent, I'm getting worried about the Chargers. If this team
gets was better, they brought in Greg Roman as their freaking offensive coordinator. So
let's go. God, that's such a weird fit. But there's so many sloppy mistakes all over Michigan, and it felt like, okay, when you get through a play without anyone making a catastrophic error, it works every time, and he can execute that. And sometimes he makes it work anyways with a scramble drill. So I love it. I like. I liked a lot of what he did. The place where he loses me is on the deep ball. Deep balls to the sideline in particular. Yep. I guess this is a slightly more pronounced thing to the left. He had a bad combine and he missed a couple at the combine, he missed a couple throws to the left, and that was on TV. So now that's everybody's opinion. But like, it's to the sideline generally, I think. And this is the thing that I've maybe found most interesting to talk about with JJ McCarthy. So it's again the thing I probably say the most is a negative thing, even though I like the guy. Is why I think that happens. So when he throws these like long moonball deep balls, right? They're woefully inaccurate. They're dreadful. They're below 50%. It's not tenable. And that's probably the biggest thing that's making me sink him below all these other guys that have this improvisational, but these little like mechanical issues or these things you want to deal with. It's like, okay, but this guy just doesn't have a deep ball. That's a big problem.
Absolutely.
Like no go balls, you can't have an offense there. You're just going to miss some. That sucks. And I think the reason for that is to get like super nitty gritty mechanical again. When you line up to throw, if you have both your feet in the ground, it's like set your feet shoulder width apart. As you're listening to this, do it. Look down at your feet. All right. Imagine a dotted line through the center of your feet. And imagine that line is the middle of a road, like the dotted center line. And on each road, there's like a 9-inch lane from or like 9 inches out from your toe and your heel is where the lanes are. So you've got a lane on your left and a lane on your right, right? When you step in to that throw, your front foot, your toe should turn toward your target, and that front foot should be in the left lane of the road. JJ McCarthy's is still on the center. It's a very, very small thing. And it ain't going to matter when you're just zipping one over the middle, when you're just throwing a quick slant, or when you're just throwing a like stick, or when you're throwing a little basic, or when you're like a seam or something like that.
The further out you get, just geometrically, it goes wide.
Right. And when you throw a deep ball, you want to come up and through it. Like you want to, if you watch Tom Brady, to watch him throw a deep ball to Randy Moss. We all love seeing that. You'll see him kind of, and then like compare that to him throwing like a bullet over the middle. The bullet, he steps really forward and into it, and he gets through it really like assertively. The deep ball, you kind of stand up into it, and your motion is way more high because you're trying to get air under it. When you do that, it pronounces this a little bit more. So it closes off your body, it closes off your hips. The reason you want to get your foot open a little bit is to just get your shoulder and your hip and all this crap out of the way so that your arm can come through comfortably and there's nothing in its way. But if you're slashing across your own body, you're robbing yourself of power, you're robbing yourself of accuracy and control and all of this bad stuff. This is a very small issue that I think if it can get fixed has a very big impact. And I think you can fix that. Again, that's lower half, right? You can drill that. So that's part of why I'm optimistic about him too, but it has to get fixed because it's not good enough for the NFL as it is.
Yeah. So, I mean, that answers my major question, right? Obviously major accuracy issues deep. I was going through Ben Solak's charting for the Ringer the other day, and it's like McCarthy shows up at the bottom. It was kind of interesting how, Maye and Bo Nix, we'll get to Bo Nix, but Maye and Bo Nix showed up actually on like the same level, which I found very interesting. So it made me feel a little bit better about Drake Maye, honestly, and going through this conversation made me feel a little bit better about Drake Maye's accuracy as well, because we see the on rhythm throws with him, right? Like those are there, and when he does it right, he's there. McCarthy, similarly, like maybe for deep balls, he doesn't ever do it right, ultimately, right? But for the majority of throws, he's in a good spot for what he's doing. So I think you need to build off of that. The secondary question I had, and these are kind of tied together. I put them as two separate line items, but they're kind of tied together. The first is like people comp him. I've heard a ton of times he gets comped to Kirk Cousins, right? Like, and the awful. National media, like,
just say mid. You mean mid. Yeah. Just say mid.
Like we watch.
No, that comp is terrible.
Kirk Cousins every single day, right? And I think there are some misconceptions with the national media and how Kirk Cousins played ultimately. But like,
yeah, how do you call a guy without a deep ball comping to Kirk Cousins? Like Kirk Cousins is a great go ball.
They mean a check down Charlie game manager, right? Who's not going to create out of structure.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that assessment?
Hey, I mean, yeah, no, not at all. Game man. So there's two major differences between. Well, I'll even say the perception of Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins has a deep ball for one. JJ McCarthy does not. And then the other thing about Kirk Cousins is that he didn't have a scramble drill. He's an old school quarterback. This dude was drafted in 2012 before we had Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and all these guys defining the league. All these other guys coming out now, they spent their high school years watching Patrick Mahomes win the Super Bowl in 2019. Like they were, in high school or maybe just starting college during that season. So that's formative to them. Kirk Cousins grew up watching like Peyton Manning and Tom Brady. Like those were the guys that were playing when he was in college and in high school. So Kirk Cousins, when he would break the pocket, yeah, you'd get like one of them every once in a while. You maybe like 2 a game at max. You'd get cool scramble drills, but that was not his pressure response. His pressure response was either get rid of the ball or take the sack. Maybe where, you know, how often were we like, oh my God, you worked the pocket,
response, right? Climb in the pocket is the pressure response, and try to save the pocket as much as you can and stand in there and take a really hard hit. Like, he deserves a ton of credit for his ability to take those hits in there.
Stand and deliver. And that was great. And that was his game. JJ McCarthy doesn't do, he has a scramble drill, and it's a good scramble drill. It's one of my favorite scramble drills in the whole class. But it's like, Kirk Cousins didn't do that. So these are total, if you want a mid, you know, kind of game managery Vikings quarterback to comp him to, just say Teddy. This dude is Teddy. Teddy had deep ball things. Teddy had the, you know, is he being carried by his team? You know, is this an Adrian Peterson team? The whole deal. Like, Teddy's a way better comp. Get this Kirk Cousins stuff out of there. They're not the same quarterback at all. You're just looking at 2 white guys you think are mid and calling them the same.
Yeah. So interesting. The Teddy comp there. I mean, you know, and unfortunately we'll never get to know. I think we both love Teddy Bridgewater for who he was as a person.
Him. Yeah, I'll never quit him
as a quarterback.
And hey, I like JJ. Maybe I just have a type.
Yeah, but what is JJ McCarthy's ultimate upside, right? Because he doesn't seem to me, from a caricature perspective, as a true physical marvel who you may think becomes one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. But let's say he fixes his deep ball. Right? Where are we at as a quarterback with JJ McCarthy? Is he pushing the upper tier, or is he still more in that secondary tier? Like, let's say the Dak, Jalen Hurts range of, like, you know, 6-7.
Yeah, I could see that there. You know, you have to be someone like Caleb or Drake Maye to have access to that. What if you're the next Mahomes question? I don't think you can see that with JJ McCarthy, but like, that doesn't invalidate him at all. Yeah, sure. The Jalen Hurts, the Dak, maybe you're, you know, top pushing the top 5 sometimes is like, that ceiling. But here's what Trevor I see.
Lawrence, we think Trevor Lawrence can go higher, but maybe like current Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, maybe that. Not Trevor Lawrence as a prospect, but Trevor Lawrence as a prospect that's had a couple not so great years in Jacksonville, or not as good as we thought, right? Because he was supposed to be the second coming. But yeah, like, I guess the projection for me is you've got this volume issue with JJ McCarthy because Michigan ran the ball a lot, and they ran the ball a lot. One, because their O-line was built to do that and not to pass. So you want to lean toward that anyways, but also because they were up by 3 scores by halftime every game. So it's like the game script, actually, once you adjust for game script, the run pass ratio looks pretty normal. Like, it was a lot of it was that. But that meant you've got this volume thing with JJ McCarthy, and you have this thing of, well, they didn't ask a lot of him. And my take with JJ McCarthy is, if you want to ask more of him, he can come through on that. That's the projection. Is I think you can successfully ask more of him than Michigan had to, because Michigan was just built differently. You do not have to be a run first team to have JJ McCarthy. And too many people think that for a guy to go from the college to the pros, you just have to make the NFL Michigan Wolverines. And that's not using your brain.
Can you imagine like being in the Michigan locker room and running the ball 26 times on Penn State to win the game? Like, can you imagine how good that must have felt for the entire Michigan team? Like, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Like that'll get people going. That'll get people to meet sweats when you just dominate the guy across from you. And being Penn State too, when you're just like, my God, I'm getting the crap kicked out of me every single play, and the only thing I can do is put my hand in the dirt and go get punched in the mouth again. Yeah. Oh, that'll change your personality.
Like, for sure. Frankly, that shows absolutely no lack of trust. That shows Michigan hit the button that made them feel good over and over and over again, because they.
Oh yeah, this is the dopamine button. The monkey with the.
Do you remember when the Vikings won the game? I think it was against Washington years ago, where we ran the ball like 14 straight times on the last drive or something.
I believe it was 18. It was with Alexander Madison.
Yes.
Because I think Dalvin Cook was hurt, and it was rookie Alexander Madison in a Thursday night football game against Washington, whose starting running back was Adrian Peterson. I'll never forget that game. That game rocked.
No, it's like, if you can do that to an opponent, you do it 10 times out of 10 if you're the offensive coordinator. So that doesn't concern me at all. why don't we flip it over? And actually, final question on JJ McCarthy. If the Vikings have to spend, and I think this is the most, we'll get into it a little bit, but the 11, 23, and a 2025 first, right? Past that, any change past that is just irrelevant to me. Is JJ McCarthy worth that?
That's an overpay for sure. I mean, I have him saying, yeah, he's a guy that probably should be taken in the top 15 picks, but not the top 10. So yeah, we're way into overpaying here, but that is, I'm not going to lose any sleep about overpaying. Like we must define this as an overpay, but an overpay is something we can be okay with if the alternative is the next guys we're going to talk about, which I'm way lower on.
Yeah.
Like I think we've gone through the guys that are worth it in the first round.
Okay. Absolutely. Let's get to Michael Penix Jr. The, I would put him as 5 for me pretty solidly right now. And again, I haven't watched these guys, so it's kind of just going off of vibes, but, and what I hear from other people. But what do you think about Penix?
Yeah. Penix for me is 5, but not solidly. But so not a first round guy because so for me, my quarterback like definition here is there are first round QBs that I think can be your franchise guy. If I think you can be the franchise guy, you're a first round quarterback. Or if I think you're more likely than not, I'll say, to be the franchise guy, then I'll put you in the first round. And if I really think the sky's the limit, you're a top 5 guy. If I think, I think you're pretty likely to be the franchise guy, but there's these things that make me a little nervous, maybe I put you a little lower. And then if I think that, there's a world where you can be the guy, but I don't see it as more likely than not, you're a second round guy. That's where I'm at with Penix. So, Penix is not unlike Jayden Daniels, go balls to Rome Odunze, jump balls and stuff. And the major difference with Daniels and Penix that makes me so much lower on him than Daniels is not the fact that, these are both dudes that are utilizing the talent of their wide receiver. Please keep throwing to Rome Odunze. You absolutely should do that all the time. It got you to the national championship game. Great strategy. And if he goes to a team that, if he does end up on the Vikings and you have Justin Jefferson, I want to see more of that. Yes, please. Then thank you. But what I saw was that Rome Odunze had to work harder to get to the ball. Not necessarily like, adjusting super hard because sometimes it's correct to do that, but he had to work against the defenders more. With Daniels, he threw well against defenders and away from defenders to lead your receiver into safe territory. And then the receiver's got to run it down. You're trusting him to do that. That's great. We love that. We take that all day. Rome had to come up through guys. He would get open and he would have to come back through guys. And you know who else I saw this from? Jordan Addison at USC with Caleb Williams a year ago. I remember seeing him have to come back through defenders a lot, and it made me a lot less worried about his size because I thought, he can actually muscle stuff away from a guy like Trevor.
Is that like back shoulder stuff, or is that like posts?
In
the middle of the field.
For Addison, it was coming from crazy angles because it was Caleb Williams, so it was all over the place. But I'm talking about like go balls. That maybe should be back shoulder or should be over the shoulder that he's got to actually like stop up for and come through.
So it's like midline through the defender where it's not like an intentional back shoulder kind of deal.
Yeah. Or if it is an intentional back shoulder kind of deal, cornerbacks in the leverage where that shouldn't be the case. Like if cornerback's trailing, you don't want back shoulder.
Yeah.
And like that kind of thing will happen. So he has to fight a little bit more, which is why I love Rome so much. Wherever he goes, I think he's a superstar because I saw like this offense goes through Rome.
Please somebody trade up to Penix. 8. I don't care. As long as the Bears don't get a receiver, I'll be happy out of this draft.
I don't think he makes it past like Tennessee. I think he's a giant, to be honest. I think QBs go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it's like Marvin Rome. That's my mock draft. But I love that. So this is an accuracy question, not a decision-making question. I actually love the way that Michael Penix's brain works. He's another older prospect, and you can see the experience. You can see him understanding coverages really comfortably. You can see him work through progressions really comfortably. Like, I love the way he sees the field, and then it just misses. And accuracy can be tough when it is caused by a lot of issues, and it is caused by a lot of issues. He doesn't. So when you're throwing, you want to shift your weight forward. Through the throw, right? You want to use your weight as kind of the thing that drives your power and like torque your hips through. He doesn't really do that. And you'll actually see his front foot slide back really dramatically. You'll see this with McCarthy on his deep ball a little bit some too. And maybe that's causing another issue there. But you'll see him like kind of drag that toe back and And like, what that tells me is if you don't have enough weight on your foot where it's dragging on you and it's not just planting because you've moved your weight, like this is on his follow through, like while he throws, then you aren't shifting your weight enough. And the way I've explained this on other shows and on my show is like, imagine like, you twist up a towel and you like smack it.
Mm-hmm.
If you got to hold one end of the towel to get all the power on that smack, right? If you just drop both ends of that towel, it falls harmlessly to the ground. You lost all your torque. And so this is why you don't want to jump when you throw. And sometimes Penix, like, he almost is jumping when he is throwing because he's trying to get so much upward momentum on it. And I think it's the reason I don't see it getting better is because I think that is a flexibility issue. And it's really hard for me to say that a flexibility issue will get fixed at all, especially with a guy that's torn up his knee twice.
Yeah.
And there's an arm angle issue which I actually saw this looked better at the pro day. Penix, of all of the guys, was the only guy where I saw the pro day look different than his college tape. His arm would come through kind of angled to the side. And I'm not the only one who saw this. It was actually in Ted Wynn's QB article thing, which is very validating to me to be like, somebody else saw that and knew it was wrong. You want the arm to come through high. You want it to your elbow is essentially should be pointing at where the ball is coming. And then the top part of your arm should be like a straight up and down pendulum that then launches it, right? Sure. Think about like a catapult, right? The elbow should be the base of the catapult and the rest of the arm should come through nice and straight. With Penix, it's angled. And so you're slashing and swinging it out. And when you swing it out wide like that, and then you're coming back across, you have to time the release of the football perfectly for you to not either pull it to your right. He's a lefty, so pull it to your right. Or if you let it go early, it's going to spray to the left. And you see plenty of both because it's really hard to time that perfectly when you're coming at an angle. So the arm angle is wrong. The torque isn't coming through right. The weight shift there's like all these issues. And then he sprays him and his accuracy is really bad. And Roma Dunze has to bail him out. That's my read on the Washington offense.
No, interesting. So accuracy issue, obviously a question mark to fix. I guess my question is, UW, obviously Washington, they had an incredible downfield offense, right? Mm-hmm. And they had a complex downfield offense, right? Like they were doing some pretty unique and innovative stuff in that offensive system. Are the throws he's making translatable to the NFL? Obviously, outside of the accuracy thing, like, is it it's not a Tennessee Mickey Mouse, and we'll get to Mickey Mouse offenses here, but it's not that, right? It's a very translatable NFL type of throws that he's making, right?
Yeah. He's reading safeties. He's reading, and I don't know if it's like the exact system that he would run or whatever. That's a different question, but he can absolutely do what he is doing in the NFL the exact same way. I'm just not sure you want that.
Right.
But when he does hit those, like that Texas game was the Sugar Bowl, right? The playoff game. All of that stuff, super pro style concepts. Yeah, for sure. Posts over the middle, finding, identifying the safeties and identifying where they're going. You got wide receivers running options. Depending on safety structure. So you're making reads with your wide receiver. You're developing that chemistry. You can show that ability. That's all part of the I love how his brain works section of the scouting report. So that all wouldn't have an issue at all. And I don't think that this is a guy that like sits a year, right? I think he kind of is who he is. And you just hope that you can work on the accuracy over time. But I don't think that this is a guy who you need to like wait. Like he's smart. He's a smart QB. I think the pressure response for him is to fall away from it and heave up fadeaway jumpers with bad mechanics. And that's where you get yourself in trouble. That's what you maybe don't want. He's not going to run, right? There was a lot made of his 40 time at his pro day because apparently it meant his knees were fine, which is like, that's not the issue. The issue is like risk of future injury, but he hates to run. He does not like to leave the pocket. This is an old school quarterback. Yeah. This is like a pocket passer statue type.
CJ Stroud kind of had that reputation, and I don't think it's as valid as it is for Penix, right? Where CJ Stroud,
people thought CJ Stroud he was like a total scrambler, no?
People were like, until the Georgia game, people thought CJ Stroud did not have it in him to work outside of structure.
That's wild.
Yeah. So obviously, you
All
don't
right.
think that was an accurate interpretation of CJ Stroud's college tape at all. But
No.
uh,
Although,
do
hey, I usually
you
don't
think
get to
there's
these
a
guys till
world?
after the college season. So
Do you think there's a world where Michael Penix becomes good out of structure, or just the way he moves and kind of how he approaches it? I mean, obviously, there's a world where anybody becomes good at anything, right? But like, how possible do you think it is for him to improve on that area of his game, or show more of that?
I don't think I would try to make him do a scramble drill. This is
Yeah.
the thing. This is a great thing that a great principle that I got from talking to somebody who's been in the league for a long time is a growth mindset versus a fixing mindset. It's like a coaching idea.
Yes.
And a fixing mindset would take Mike Penix and say, you don't scramble enough, let's get you scrambling. But a growth mindset would say, how do I make it so you're as comfortable as possible versus pressure? And I don't know if scrambling is the answer to that.
Sure.
So I think this guy will always be a pocket passer. But for pocket passers, you take him the Kirk Cousins route where you go, okay, get the ball out quickly, right? I think he's more built to be that kind of QB, to make him like a quick read, 2 seconds and go, you can never get pressure on me kind of guy. And if there is pressure, maybe it's like when I play Madden and there's pressure on me, I just click the go ball and just say, whatever,
Yeah.
let's throw a high pass and see what happens. Like, it kind of seems like that's what happens a lot of the times. And it can make these really eye-popping highlights of like, oh my God, falling away. He threw this awesome pass. Look at Rome come down with it. And then some like really disgusting low lights. Like you saw some of that in the championship game against Michigan.
Okay, so do you think that is a little bit more of let's say, you know, Kirk Cousins ceiling to his game, right? And we think he has accuracy issues which limit his floor, right? And is not like um the necessarily immediate player you want starting, even if he has to start immediately. Like, I think there's no reason he can't be put on the field immediately, other than he might just not be good enough as a quarterback to do that, right? Like, from a mental perspective, it's not there. But if Michael Penix, let's say he gets a more appropriate pressure response than he has now, he fixes the accuracy issues a little bit. Does that make him a quote unquote Kirk range quarterback, right? Where he's like a fringe top 10 guy who you're always hemming and hawing about actually paying money? Or do you think he can be better than that? Or do you think he's, a little bit worse than that?
I wouldn't say Kirk. I would say if tall Drew Brees was old,
Okay.
or tall old Drew Brees, or if old Drew Brees was tall, that would be the thing. That would be like not ancient, 2020 Drew Brees where things were falling off, but like 2019, 2018 Drew Brees. Those were great offenses. So you can have a phenomenal offense, assuming that he gets accurate. And if he can get the ball out super quick, yeah, I would work with that. I just don't see it. I don't see it happening. Right. But because that outcome exists, he's not a 4th round guy to me, right? He's not let's see if he develops as a backup. This dude gets a chance in the league. And that's why I have him as a 2nd round guy. He gets a chance to fix those things. If you can hit it, and if you can get the ball out quickly so that pressure is no longer an issue, yeah, I think like late stage Drew Brees is the play style I'm looking at, except with like 6 more inches.
And that is kind of, for me, why I think Penix would be, the 5th guy in terms of all of these guys, just because of where I think he can be if he fixes some of his issues, compared to this next guy we're going to talk about in Bo Nix. And that's really a downer going into the Bo Nix conversation. I kind of killed it there on us. But what did you see about Bo Nix? Maybe ran about the Oregon offense a little bit, and then, yeah, we'll go from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the Oregon offense, I get people are just super like frustrated with the amount of short game and quick game that he had to do. That's just the way they wanted to play. Maybe that's because they didn't trust him or whatever, but it eventually got pretty easy to just fast forward past those. Like, yeah, we get it. He's very good at it. You get a great sample of seeing him. And I am going to be one of those. I argued this a lot when we were talking about Will Levis last year, that doesn't bug me. That like, great. You're good at quick game. Quick games in the NFL too. That's actually more NFL-y than these like run around improv schoolyard crap. You see a lot more of, 3-step drop, run, stick, get, set up a nice 2nd and 6 and continue on. with him, it's like if you isolate away all that quick game and you just go to the plays where it was 3rd and long or where they decided to do something a little more real, like there was a downfield thing, you could just isolate enough of those, but you can get enough of those plays where you can evaluate how
it's
he
like
is.
JJ. It's a different version of JJ McCarthy, but it's like JJ McCarthy, where
Yeah, except instead of the run, it's bubble screens.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But once you do that, then you start to see all these flaws pop up. With like the big one for me is he never really drives it. It's opposite JJ McCarthy. Everything has got a little bit of touch, a little bit of feather to it. And that will make it slow. So sometimes the ball arrives where it should be, but late. So receivers have to wait for it, and then defenders can get into it. And he always throws with a really tall posture. Like it's a purposeful thing. He's getting air under every pass. So that is, to me, I think this is where I'm theorizing, and I'm trying to kind of psycho in. I'm trying to guess and make leaps here. That paper's over an arm strength issue. That he's not driving it because he can't drive it, and so instead he's putting touch on everything and hoping that his receivers can go up and get it.
Yep.
And then you've got all these other issues. Like when we talk about pocket presence, he's either sitting in the pocket or he's running out of it. There's no rescue the pocket. He's not interested in that. When there's pressure, he's either going to sit there and he's going to stand and deliver, and that's good, or he's going to start running around. I love half of his scrambles. I love it when he's scrambling to the right. Can't really throw on his run to the left, which means you're going to be able to structure defensive game plans around that. Right. That is a very open, glaring weakness that you can game plan for, which is a big, big flag to me. If defenses have a really clear way to prepare for you.
You can work the pocket so it makes it impossible to flush in one direction, basically, with the way you're doing your rush.
Right.
So,
and if you want an example of that, I think it was Harrison Smith actually talked about it in the Carolina game 2023 with Bryce Young, because of the way he dropped back. There was a similar thing that the Vikings could take advantage of, and it actually led to that really cool DJ Wanham scoop and score. So yeah, there's that. But for me, the big thing is, okay, I'm like pretty concerned about arm strength, and then everything in that Oregon offense. Here's the frustration here. Everything was pre-snap pick aside. So when you're doing pre-snap, and like when I wrote an article about Bo Nix, all I could get about him that was salient was pre-snap reading. And he's very good at pre-snap reading because he did it like every play. So you can do pre-snap reads with him. Great. Excellent. He knows what he's looking at the defense. So what you're looking for is you're looking at QB or cornerback leverage. How far off are they playing? Are they inside? Are they outside? You're looking for blitz indicators like extra players. If a slot corner is covered up by a safety, if they're on the same same vertical, then you might want to worry about that slot guy coming, and maybe that safety has the guy, right? You want to look for unaccounted for overhang defenders. You want to count how many people are underneath what this I think is a high deck line. So 8 yards from the line of scrimmage, and then like in the box, how many players are there? That will give you information about the coverage and stuff like that. And then you can look at all of that information and then pick a side, and they'll have a bubble screen on one side and slant flat on the other or something like that.
Yep.
And then you're picking the side that which concept works better, which takes a lot of intelligence. So you've got the smarts, you've got the brain power here. But you've got this like talent deficiency. This is a backup quarterback in the NFL. This is a good NFL backup quarterback with a future in coaching, but that's Bo Nix. If you're looking at Bo Nix and saying this guy's the future that's going to lead us to Super Bowls, I don't see enough talent, and I see way too many problems. Doesn't know how to throw on the left. He doesn't know how to put drive into the ball. This is going to lead to accuracy issues, right? Like there's all kinds of issues, way too many issues to fix, and that's why I have Penix over him. Because at least with Penix, it's like fix this, fix that, you got it. With Nix, it's like a myriad of things. He's got more issues than my 25-year-old car.
So for Nix, right? Pre-snap, obviously you think he's great reading. Post-snap, how do you feel?
There just wasn't a lot of it.
Yeah.
So it's like hard. Like he read the full field a couple times. I saw him do it a couple times. Okay, it's there, but how comfortable are you doing that? Probably not that comfortable, because you didn't do it at Oregon at all. So you didn't do it all year. And I don't know if he did it more in previous years or something like that, but it's like, well, then you're going to at best be rusty at it.
Yeah.
So like that's kind of, I can't say it's a positive. I can only maybe say it's neutral, but it's like probably a concern too.
So
yeah, there's a lot of concern.
with any of these guys, right? And there are some instances where you didn't see it necessarily. If we go back to Jayden Daniels and playing like throwing over the middle of the field, right? Do you have any major pre-snap or post-snap processing concerns with any of these players where it's like the way they are processing information does not play?
So there's one with Drake Maye, and that's protection calling. So I don't know if he's in charge of that. If he's not, then that's kind of a problem in and of itself. But UNC busted a lot of protections. There were a lot of just like unblocked A gaps, like someone messed up. So that's either a communication issue that maybe that's Maye's fault, maybe it isn't. Maybe he was supposed to adjust something and he didn't. Like there are times when like the protection full slides away from a clear blitzer. It's like, what are we doing? We just let two guys come in unblocked and sack you. What?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's a deep developing play. So there's not even a hot route. It's like, wait, this clearly didn't work, and you should have been able to see that pre-snap. So could he have seen that and he just messed up? Does he not have the power to see that because the coaches don't trust him to do it? There's a bunch of different answers to that question. None of them are good. So there's one there that kind of messed me up. But you like Caleb Williams, he'll dial at the line of scrimmage. I don't remember with the other guys.
So no, I just wanted to bring it up because I think it's something that gets talked about a lot. Like quarterback decision making gets talked about a ton, and usually people refer to it as like interceptions, right? But that's not how quarterback decision making functionally works when you're looking at it, right? And an interception can be for a number of different reasons, whether you made a bad decision or you're just an inaccurate pass or like bad luck, right? Like there could be a number of different ways. But to me, it sounds like from like a reading the defensive coverage structure, you don't have necessarily, nothing's like popped out to you as like, oh, this guy can't necessarily do that.
Not with Nix. And I do give him credit for the smarts that he shows.
Yeah.
And I'll also give him a lot of credit. Like if you are a Bo Nix truther, here's your coat. All right. Here's your vision. It was all everyone else at Oregon's fault. And that's actually kind of valid. Like, so the receivers would do kind of the same thing we saw at Michigan of, you know, they wouldn't run things at the right angles. They would run into each other a lot. Like they just run straight up the wrong route and bump into each other and fall down.
That's the Gregg Blake special right there. Look for that for the Chargers, especially with no wide receiver.
Chargers fans, look away. We have not been kind to you today. But hey, we got you Marvin Harrison. But like, yeah, that it could definitely be their fault. And here's the other thing. Troy Franklin, ass. Absolutely do not draft Troy Franklin. That dude is not a player that belongs in the NFL. He was not the go-to playmaker on the Oregon offense, at least that I saw. Like when they needed it, when they really needed it, it was, you know, maybe set him up with a yak opportunity, but a lot of times he'd either just get clamped up or run the wrong route and he would have to progress to somebody else. And there were other players in that Oregon offense that, like, if they got injured, would probably hurt the offense more.
He's like Jalen Hyatt to me, where he's super skinny. He didn't run as fast as people said he was going to run. And now we're expecting him to be like a fringe first round pick. So
he's like a fantasy darling, right? Like there's like, he just like, there was a lot of targets.
I don't know,
he
he's
got
probably
like a
got
lot
good
of
metrics or something, like whatever.
Well, I'm sure he caught a million bubble screens because that's all Oregon was. But like, that is the offense you run when everyone on your team is ass.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's weird, right? Because I think you have dynamic athletes with the ball in their hand, right? But they're not technically proficient players, right? You don't want to coach up the technique of the players. You're just like, all right, you're going to be better than everybody else for 10 games a season because we're at Oregon and we're playing a bunch of Pac-12 teams, and then we're going to lose to Washington twice because they actually have a real offense. Anyway, to bring this back to Bo Nix, and I'll wrap it up with kind of the question I've been asking for these last few players, right? Do we think, and I've been using Kirk as the stand-in, right? Because I think we kind of have an understanding
we're trying to improve on him, right?
What Kirk is, and we're trying to improve on him. Like, maybe another Kirk-esque player is a Daniel Jones, right? Where Nix, you know, doesn't have a huge arm, you know, is a bit more of a scrambler guy, but there are some inefficiencies with his scrambling, right? Do you think he has the potential to become that level of player, or you think he's really going to be mired down more in, like, I don't know, the Kenny Pickett range?
That's more where I'm at. This guy's destined to back people up. Maybe he does get drafted too high and a team gives him a chance to start and then it doesn't work out. But we're in the, we drafted him for a third and we're traded him for a fifth for a seventh round pick by year 3 kind of world. I don't like the Daniel Jones because Daniel Jones runs better.
Yeah.
Like Daniel Jones can scramble and like be explosive with his legs. Bo Nix can run okay. Like he's as all these young guys, you're 21 and you're going to be playing against a bunch of 30-year-olds. You're going to be fast.
Sam Howell?
He's tough. Yeah. Maybe it's a Sam Howell thing. It's like, what if Daniel Jones like wasn't an explosive scrambler? That's the comp here. So I just don't see that. The more I talk about it, maybe I am not quite as loose about having Penix above Nix.
It's just because for me, right? Like that's what we all want is the upside on Kirk, and I think that's how you have to frame the discussion, right? I guess if we get Kirk Cousins' performance, which to be fair, like the majority of quarterbacks are not as good as Kirk Cousins, right? In 2 years, we're going to be talking about, at least 3 of the guys I would bet that we've talked about. And it's kind of random. Like, we don't know who it is.
Sure.
And they're not going to end up as good as Kirk Cousins as a quarterback or remotely close or be worth that, right? So the Vikings are taking a very big risk in moving on from Kirk Cousins. But, if you're going to move on from Kirk Cousins, I want to get a guy with that upside, right? Where I could be better than Kirk Cousins. So that's how I kind of frame the conversation for me and why I've landed. And honestly, you've pretty much aligned with my opinions going into this. You're higher than Jayden Daniels than I was. And I think I am more pushing on the Jayden Daniels side. Like my thing was like Jayden Daniels or JJ McCarthy. I might be over that a little bit now. Right. So
yeah, it's easy to get it because he's the commander. Like,
yeah. So
yeah, you know what? Comp wise for Nix, I think Mac Jones is a better answer.
Okay. Interesting.
That might be the trajectory. Maybe you get in, you're smart enough, you can play right away, but there comes a moment where your kind of lack of physical tools is just going to catch up with you.
Yeah.
And if you ever get in your head like Mac Jones did, then you're like cookeronied.
Yeah. So you have to have a quality supporting cast to start out if you're Bo Nix. And then that quality supporting cast has to continue on, right? And you can't end up with Matt Patricia as your freaking offensive coordinator and the terrible offense that the Patriots ended up with. But, even though Mac Jones played well his first year, he was a mid quarterback, right? He's not a guy you're like,
right, which is great for a rookie. And then the expectation surpasses you.
Yeah. So there's kind of that. So going back to the draft conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the Vikings are going to need to spend significant capital to get one of these guys, right?
Mm-hmm.
For Williams, Daniels, Maye, I think the answer for you is obvious. Like that price tag I put there, 11-23 and a 2025 first, right? Next year's first is worth paying. McCarthy, you're like, it's an overpay, but maybe. Any of these guys, are you okay with the Vikings sending their 2024 first? Like, let's say the Patriots somehow get the negotiating leverage to say, we want these 4 first-round picks that you guys have access to. You doing that?
If that's the difference, sure. Yeah, the 2026 pick. If that's, it's not worth passing on this to save that 2026 first.
Yeah.
Like, I guess that's the way I'll think about it.
Okay.
But like if you think of like the inventory the Vikings have, that's kind of it. That's kind of what they've got. Those 4 first-round picks. They've got a 3rd rounder next year. They've got 2026, second and thirds and stuff that they can start to incorporate. But those are. It's pretty hard to make those move the needle.
Yeah,
because they're so deferred. So it's really you've got these 4 first-round picks, and for me, if the difference between getting Drake Maye and oops, I got Michael Penix is that's one thing. I think you can maybe talk me into, well, JJ McCarthy, but you keep the 2026 first. And if I had to guess value wise, and it's a super guess, and I'm not very good at this, so grain of salt, if you're going up to like 4 or 5 to get JJ McCarthy, I think you're giving up 11 and 23 next year's first, and you're getting something significant back. Like you're not just giving up those 3 straight up. You're getting like a 2nd or 3rd back.
So I wanted to put that stress test to the question, right? Because I'm in the same place. I think, and for me, I'm a little bit more psychology on this. I think Well, and it's like, I think you'd agree with this. The Vikings have to believe in the quarterback they're drafting to make it worth it to trade up at all, right? If they're super out
Yeah,
on
for
JJ
sure.
McCarthy, you can't trade up to draft JJ McCarthy because everybody else likes JJ McCarthy, right? Like, you can't do that. Or Jayden Daniels or Caleb Williams or Drake Maye. I don't care. If you love Michael Penix, like, if you're the Vikings, like, obviously you need to get truth serum with them to get this out and like actually get it accurate, because they're going to say they love the guy regardless. But like, you can't spend additional capital on a guy you don't love. At the same time, I want them to spend the capital on a guy they love because they love him, right? It's kind of both sides of those things. So
yeah, the Brandon Bean nailed it with that quote that was like, look, by the time we're paying, but like by the time we're experiencing the impact of losing all these first round picks, which is going to be kind of 2 years after all those guys are supposed to be drafted. So we're talking 27, 28 is when you're really going to feel not having those picks. It's either going to be easily papered over because you got a really phenomenal quarterback, or it's the next guy's problem because I'm fired.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like, that's how the front office literally has to think about it, right? It's their job.
Yeah, it's right. Like, we don't get to be fired because we're fans. We're stuck here. Sorry, you live in hell. You aren't getting out. Hotel California. You can check in, but you can't leave. But they get fired, so they're not going to be too super worried about the efficacy of the 2028 Vikings and the efficacy of the 2028 Vikings. Maybe the best thing you can do right now for the 2028 Vikings is get a really good quarterback that stays in the building.
Yeah, and then my next question, and I'd really like to talk to somebody about this who like isn't a Vikings fan or is like a Patriots fan or like just a general NFL person who like thinks really hard about these things, right? Is if you're the New England Patriots at 3, right? And you love one of the quarterbacks and he's there at 3, like, you have to take him, right? There's no price the Vikings can pay that can move him off of that, right?
Yeah, you're unplugging the phone if your guy falls.
And then,
so the cope has to be, if Jayden Daniels goes to the Commanders, is Drake Maye isn't New England's guy. Yeah. And they don't really like him that much because they're too worried about his footwork or whatever. That has to be like the mentality. And I think that is absolutely a plausible outcome. And I think if they were super in love with Drake Maye, I think they would have already hung up. And I think the rumor mill would have worked differently. So I do think that they're at least thinking about it.
So to me, like, the logic isn't there for New England to push up the price beyond what a normal trade up to number 3 overall would be, right? Because all the speculation I hear from outside Vikings media, right, is the Vikings must send that 2025 first to get to number 3, right? And like, it has to be that one. To me, the 2026 first would work, but I think I'm maybe big braining that a little bit, right? But 3 first round picks and then some is a lot of what I hear when I hear people talk about trading with the New England Patriots, right? Like, to me, if you're New England and you don't love a quarterback, right, you can't take him at 3 if you don't love the guy and want to put your full support around him, because your roster is so bad that, like, you're just going to set that guy up for failure, right? In my opinion. Do you think that New England would take a guy just to have one if they don't love him and try to use that to drive up the price? Or the Vikings really just bidding against the Raiders and the Giants and whoever else wants to go up?
This is why the Patriots are going to be very close to the vest about who they like, right? Because you have to kind of convince the Vikings that we like him, but I guess you might just be able to move him off us if you just pay us enough, which is kind of what Elliot Wolf is saying on the podium.
Yeah, I know.
So I think, they have, if the perception gets out that they don't really like Drake Maye and they're just going to try to like value pill this, the price plummets, so they can't let you think that. But I will say, so I do think that if you are getting up to 3, if you get up to 3 for 11, 23, and next year's first, so the 3 first round picks for the third straight up, I think that's a coup for Minnesota. And if you're New England, you're still utilizing the leverage you have, which is that Minnesota has a 1 quarterback under a 1-year deal. The only quarterback under contract in 2025 for the Vikings right now is Jaren Hall. Yeah. So they've got nothing, and they cannot go into next year without some kind of this guy is going to be the guy plan, whether it's Michael Penix and we got to squint at it a little bit, or whether it's something that, we're more excited about. They have to have someone. And if it is known that the Vikings are very in love with Drake Maye, I don't even think they've tried that hard to keep that a secret. And And the Patriots are leveraging that and saying, we know you love this guy. We know this is your franchise. We know you're tying your whole career to this guy. We get to ask for more. And by the way, we're not telling you that we're not even really that into it. So you think we're really into him too. So we're going to negotiate on that platform. And I think that way the Patriots can get more out of the Vikings. And I wouldn't shed a tear if they did, because I think that that's perfectly fair. If it's just the 3 first-round picks, oh my goodness gracious. That ultimately is 2 firsts, 2 seconds. And then by 2026, you're done paying for it. Oh, that's phenomenal. I'm backflips if that's what happens.
Yeah, what's making people scared, I think, is the Bryce Young thing, is the Carolina Panthers thing, where they ended up trading the first overall pick, right?
Don't pick a bad guy, right?
And I don't think the Vikings roster is like as depleted as the Carolina Panthers was.
No, and if they have CJ Stroud and you get the CJ Stroud season for that, nobody's talking about this. Yeah. So just don't whiff on the pick. But that goes no matter where you pick, no matter how much you spend.
Nobody's talking about.
If you sit at 11 and take Christian Ponder, guess what? You're going to get a lot of flack for that too.
Nobody's talking about the much worse trade the Texans made to get Will Anderson, because A, Will Anderson was good, and B, they sent the 27th overall pick to the Cardinals, right? Like, it's just, hindsight, and they hit on CJ Stroud, right? C. They hit on their quarterback in the first place, so nobody really cares about the second pick that they made. So yeah, if you hit on the guy, nobody cares.
It is, or like, but this has gotten through to some people that I've talked to. If Christian Ponder were a second rounder, but everything else played out the same, he still started for 2 years, he still got benched by year 3 and all that. If you were a second rounder and you still, like, 2012, you picked 3rd overall and you didn't pick a quarterback in that draft class, like, all that stuff still happened, but you just only spent a second instead of a first. Are you going, yeah, that was okay, that wasn't too bad? No, we're still going completely insane on him. We're still going to try to dox his wife or whatever. Are you kidding me? We're going crazy. We're going to cyberbully him.
Yeah, no, like, okay, maybe you're less mad at the front office because they didn't overpay for this guy, but like, nobody's going to have a parade for Christian Ponder in 15 years, right? If you, you have to.
Nobody's going to have a parade for the future first round pick that they saved by not trading up in 2011, which, by the way, turned into the 3rd overall pick and was Matt Khalil.
And like, this has been my thing. Like, so I looked at the history of trade ups, and granted, it's a small sample size, right? There have been hits around the 11th overall pick range. Most notably, obviously, Patrick Mahomes and then Deshaun Watson as well, right? Nobody has stayed put past 8 with Ryan Tannehill, and that's even a questionable stay put, and been successful on a quarterback, right? Like, the other teams have actionably shown that they liked the guys that they were going up to get, and I think that matters. Because did the team try to support Christian Ponder all out? Probably, but like, and granted, like, we didn't put the best supporting cast around him, but like, was the vision there that was like, this team's built on Christian Ponder? No, it was built on Adrian Peterson, right? And in 2024, you have to build your team around the quarterback. It doesn't matter. Like, it has to be built around the quarterback. We can't pretend we're in 2012 anymore. And even in 2012, it was frankly an outdated philosophy, and that's why it didn't work. Right, and the quarterback was bad, but yeah,
you gotta have a vision. Like, I think if you're the Chiefs, right, you're coming up for Mahomes. I think this is the thing I praise the most about the way the Bills built their team, is that they saw Josh Allen, they saw the path for him, they saw what they wanted to do with him, they saw that how they wanted to develop him, they understood, they were willing to start him for a year and be patient through all of his growing pains through like a 3-win season in 2018, and they had that plan and they stuck to it, and they were in the AFC Championship game by the end of it, right? And they're still trying to make this thing work. And so like that build to me is, or like that because they had a vision for him, they were excited enough about that vision to come up. Versus if you just stick and you just take the Mac Jones that falls to you. Did you have a vision for Mac Jones? Or were you really in love with him, or was he there? Don't take the guy that's just there.
Yeah. And if you're the Vikings, right, I think the Josh Allen lesson is instructive, because Josh Allen sucked his first 2 years. Like, let's be honest, he was bad.
Yeah.
And
maybe they even made the playoffs in 2019.
Maybe it was part,
and he was awful in that playoff game.
Nobody liked Josh Allen as a quarterback, right, coming out of the draft, and I certainly didn't like Josh Allen coming out of the draft. So maybe I stuck on him being bad too long, but he was not good, and that Bills roster was bad. So if you're like the Patriots and you truly believe in a Drake Maye, you got to stand there, which sucks for us, right? But you got to stand there and take the guy, even though your roster is bad and you kind of don't have that, if you're willing to put the vision around him, right? But the Vikings have to execute that plan as well. They need to find a guy who they believe in the vision for and stick to that vision for as long as Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell are employed by the Minnesota Vikings, right? And if they do anything else than that, it's a failure. If the guy sucks, they're going to get fired anyway. But they need to stick to the vision. You can't have the wishy-washy Bears stuff where you're firing your coach after 1 year, and now a guy needs to work with somebody he didn't draft.
Yeah, and somebody without a vision is coming in and saying, well, I guess I have Justin Fields. Okay, we'll try to make this work.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't. Yeah, exactly. And I'm even like a guy, like I talked about this on Locked On Vikings a little bit. Like I get a little weird about, like I get it. You miss on the quarterback, it's probably your job and you're tying your whole future to it. But I kind of feel like, doesn't that mean that now your quarterback will always be drafted by a guy drafting a quarterback for the first time? That feels suboptimal.
Oh, the way NFL franchises
like, can we let somebody make a mistake and learn from it?
It's a really delicate balance, right? Because there are absolutely instances where people are given too long of leashes and it doesn't work, right? Mm-hmm. But I think in a lot of cases, it's too short of a leash, right? Where somebody can learn from their mistakes. Like in the GM role, you're not allowed to learn from your mistakes. If you make too many mistakes, you're fired. And then you don't get
fired, and a new guy has to start learning. Yeah. And guess what? The new guy's going to start making some of the same mistakes that the old guy made and would have learned from.
And we don't rehash GMs, it's really not a thing that happens all that often. So there's a handful of guys who are respected long-term guys, but it's usually guys who had immediate success, right? And then fell off, and then they get another job. So it's kind of, it's definitely an interesting NFL team building question. That's, more of an ownership question than anything. And to give the Wolves credit, they're incredibly patient. So I think that's to their benefit in a lot of cases.
That's to the benefit of the Vikings for sure, as much as fans like to freak out.
No. So we've gone extremely long, but I'll open the floor for you on the draft to see if you got anything else to talk about, any players you love, maybe outside of, the first 3-round range, just because we don't expect the Vikings to have a pick, but you can talk about Chop Robinson a little bit too, if you want to.
I was going to say Chop Robinson's my guy. He is just a guy that causes problems every single play, with more consistency and frequency. And when I say cause problems, it's not always going to show up on the stat sheet, but he will, ruin an angle for someone and then someone else gets that tackle, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Cutting off the field, that kind of stuff. That stuff doesn't really get charted and you're not going to see it. And that's, and so I encourage people to really watch and really look at what the running back could have done if Chop Robinson had a normal rep. And it's always going to be a lot less. I've got a Patreon video for that and you can go watch it too. But I love Chop so much. I think he's a superstar. I think he's like perennial Pro Bowler. Like I can't be high enough on him. If we want to go later, guys, I actually really like Joan Briggs out of Cincinnati. I think that's the 4th round is a great time to get a D tackle.
Nice. Because that's what we need in the 4th round.
Right. Yeah, that works out. Like get a D tackle. I got notes. I can just list off a bunch of names of guys that I like. I like Jordan. I like both the LSU. I haven't watched Mason Smith, but I like Wingo. I like Jordan Jefferson. I'm okay with Logan Lee out of Iowa. I like Joan Briggs. I really like Xavier Thomas out of Clemson. I love Xavier Thomas out of Clemson. I don't know if he's a day 3 guy.
Also, is he like 25 because he was in school for like 6 years? I think he was like on the Trevor Lawrence national championship team as a freshman.
Don't care.
Anyway.
That dude rocks. Like that dude's killing 1st round tackles on his tape.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he rocks. But maybe the age is going to sink him. I don't know if he's there by day 3. He feels like a day 2 guy to me, but that would be really sick.
Once you're a day 3 guy, I legitimately do not care how old you are or really.
We're way past that. Yeah. Yeah, I think those are the late round guys. I only did D-line and quarterbacks this year. And Spencer Rattler is not an NFL player.
Oh, yeah. I wasn't expecting him to be, but it is what it is, man.
He is not. No, that guy does not. That guy is. See if that guy's a Montreal Alouette. I swear to God.
People love the arm, and like I get it from a certain perspective for quarterbacks.
Okay.
Like, we're talking about these guys, and these 6 guys are legit the only guys with a shot, right? And if a Brock Purdy happens, everybody screwed up on it. So a Brock Purdy happened.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I get when people look at super arm talent and are like, all right, we've got a bunch of nonsense out here in this group of quarterbacks beyond the top 6 guys, right? And we just want to get the guy with the best arm. So I get that. But
Yeah.
like also
It's what if you took the Drake May bozo ball plays, like the super idiot interceptions, and then put that on a QB, on like put that brain into Bo Nix, and then like gave it arm strength.
Oh no.
And it's like, well, there's a million things wrong here. It's what if Bo Nix wasn't smart? Like that's the whole point of him.
That is not great. So on that note, Luke, it was an awesome time talking to you here.
I always have so much fun. I have like normally on podcasts, I'm like, man, if this thing goes over an hour, like I can't like just sit here. But man, I could chat ball with you all day, man.
No, that rules. And honestly, I'm almost like Nick and Greg couldn't make it, unfortunately, but we probably would have gone like 2.5 hours if one of them was here. So
yeah, Nick would have found a way to like lawyer me out of something. I swear.
No, absolutely. There would have been a lot of that. But I'll wrap it up here. He is Luke Braun, at Luke Braun NFL on Twitter. He does the Locked On Vikings podcast. He is also at patreon.com/Luke Braun NFL. Honestly, if you listen to this podcast and you weren't familiar with Luke's work, I would be a little bit surprised. But Luke does great stuff.
Some people might have come from me because I mention you guys all the time.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like it's much more likely that you've come here from Luke Braun than the other way around. But we'll try to help him out if anybody hasn't seen that before. And the rest of the squad, right? Myself, Matt Fries at Fries Football, Nick Olson at Nick Olson NFL. Greg is at the Gregg Blake on Instagram. We are Kindred Skulls on Twitter at Kindred Skulls. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, where you get to see our beautiful faces. You get to see a little arm motion action from Luke Braun over there. And with that, Skull Vikings.
Cool, baby.
Another first round corner wouldn't do us any harm. Oh, another first round corner wouldn't do us any harm. Oh, another first round corner wouldn't do us any harm. And we'll all cheer on behind. And we'll score the old Vikings along. We'll score